The massive crystal doors of the Luminary High Council chamber swung open. Jack Miller wiped his sweaty palms on his pants and took a deep breath. He was the first human to ever step foot in this sacred space, and he knew all eyes would be on him. The room sparkled with light bouncing off gem-encrusted walls. 12 tall, slender aliens with skin that shimmered like polished metal sat in a half-circle. Their eyes, large and bright with colors no human had ever seen, tracked Jack's every move. At the center sat High Counselor Vexara. Her skin had a blue-silver glow that made the others look dull in comparison. 2 assistants fanned her with giant leaves, though the room wasn't hot. Jack guessed it was more about showing her importance than keeping her cool. "So this is what humans look like up close," Vexara said. Her voice sounded like music, but her words cut like knives. "Smaller than I expected." Jack stood straight, trying to look confident despite feeling like a child in a room full of giants. The Luminari were all at least 7 feet tall. "Thank you for meeting with me, High Counselor," Jack said with a small bow. "Earth is honored by this chance to speak with the Luminari." Vexara waved her 6-fingered hand as if swatting away his words. "Let's not waste time. You wish to propose an alliance between your species and the Luminari?" Her lips curled up in what might have been a smile, but looked more like a sneer. "Humans have no pedigree to speak of. Your genetic makeup is messy, wild, and shows no sign of proper enhancement throughout your history." The other council members nodded and whispered to each other. One even laughed openly. Jack had been warned about this. The Luminari had spent over 5,000 years perfecting their genetic code. They had eliminated all diseases, extended their lives to 300 years, and given themselves special abilities like night vision and perfect memory. To them, humans were like cavemen who had somehow stumbled upon a spaceship. "High Counselor," Jack said, keeping his voice steady. "What humans lack in genetic engineering we make up for in adaptability and resilience. Earth has survived 3 near-extinction events in the past century alone. We believe an alliance would benefit both our peoples." Vexara's eyes, silver pools that seemed to see right through him, narrowed to slits. "Perhaps we could use humans as workers or fighters, but certainly not as equals. Your kind lacks the genetic stability that defines civilized species." A hot flush crept up Jack's neck, but he kept his cool. This was too important to mess up because of hurt feelings. "We're more than our genes," Jack replied. "Judge us by what we do and what we've built, not by what you think are flaws in our biology." Whispers filled the room. Some council members looked amused, others disgusted. Jack heard someone say, "The monkey speaks well for its kind." Just then, the side door to the chamber opened. A new Luminari entered, and the whole room went silent. Unlike the silver-blue skin of Vexara and most of the council, this newcomer had skin that glowed golden, casting warm light as she walked. Her movements were graceful, almost like she was floating. Even Jack, who knew little about Luminari culture, could tell she was special. "Daughter," Vexara said, her musical voice hitting a sour note, "the council is in session." "I apologize for the interruption, Mother," said the golden woman, bowing slightly. "I was told the human ambassador had arrived, and I wish to observe." Mother and daughter. Jack filed that information away. The golden woman's eyes fell on him, and unlike the contempt he'd seen in the others, her gaze held something else. Curiosity. "You may stay, Lyrana," Vexara said stiffly. "Perhaps it is good for you to see what happens when a species fails to maintain genetic standards." Lyrana said nothing but took a seat at the edge of the council circle. Her golden eyes never left Jack. "The council will think about your proposal," Vexara announced, looking back at Jack. "Though I warn you not to get your hopes up, human. The Luminari have standards to maintain." The dismissal was clear. Jack bowed again, though it took all his willpower not to say something he'd regret. As he turned to leave, the golden woman, Lyrana, stood up. "I will escort our guest out," she said. Her mother frowned but didn't object. In the hallway away from the council's eyes, Lyrana spoke softly. "You handled my mother well. Few have the courage to stand their ground before the High Counselor." "I've faced worse," Jack said with a small smile, thinking of his drill sergeant back on Earth. Have you? Lyrana asked, her golden eyes studying him closely. From what I know of Earth, you have been at peace for nearly a century. Not all battles are fought with weapons, Jack replied. They walked in silence for a moment. Jack noticed that Lyrana, though tall like all Luminari, was shorter than her mother by at least 6 inches. Her golden skin seemed to pulse with light, from within, especially when she spoke. Is it true that humans pair bond without genetic screening? She asked suddenly. Jack almost laughed. You mean fall in love? Yes, we still do things the old-fashioned way. Fascinating, Lyrana said, her voice free of the mockery he'd heard from the others. And you have no way to predict what traits your offspring will have. That's part of the adventure, Jack said. Each child is a surprise. They reached the exit where Jack's shuttle waited. Lyrana stopped at the doorway, her golden skin glowing brighter in the sunlight that streamed through the open door. Perhaps, she said thoughtfully, there is more to humans than our scientific records suggest. Jack smiled. I hope I get the chance to prove that to you and your council. As do I, Jack Miller, Lyrana replied. As do I. Jack stared out the viewport of the human shuttle as it descended toward the luminary capital city. 3 months had passed since his first meeting with the High Council. Against all odds, they had agreed to a small cultural exchange program. 5 humans, including Jack, would spend 6 months learning about luminary society. Don't get your hopes up, Commander Powell had warned before Jack left Earth. They probably just want to study us like lab rats. The shuttle landed on a floating platform that hovered 1,000 feet above the actual ground. The city was built in layers with the highest buildings reserved for the genetic elite. A small group of Luminari waited on the landing pad. Jack's heart beat faster when he spotted a familiar golden glow among the silver-blue figures. Lyrana had come to meet them personally. Ambassador Miller, she said formally, but her eyes sparkled with something warmer. Welcome back to Lumina. I will be your guide during your stay. One of the silver-skinned Luminari officials frowned. High Counselor Vexara assigned you this task? I find that hard to believe. I volunteered, Lyrana replied coolly. Who better to help our guests understand our ways than someone of my standing? The official didn't argue further. Jack learned quickly that Lyrana's golden skin meant no one questioned her directly, except her mother. The humans were given living quarters in the middle level of the city. Nice enough, but clearly not where the elite Luminari lived. Each morning, Lyrana would arrive to take them on tours or to meetings. Why are all the buildings curved? Asked Sam, one of the human scientists during their 3rd day. We believe straight lines block the flow of energy, Lyrana explained, and square corners trap negative thoughts. Jack noticed how patient Lyrana was with their questions, never showing the disgust most Luminari couldn't hide when talking to humans. After 2 weeks, Lyrana began taking Jack alone on special tours, while the other humans worked with Luminari scientists. At first it seemed normal. Jack was the ambassador after all. But soon it became clear that she was showing him things no outsider had ever seen. This is the Hall of Ancestors, she told him one day, leading him into a massive dome filled with glowing orbs. Each sphere contains the complete genetic code of a Luminari who made our race better. Jack watched the colored lights dance inside the transparent balls. It's beautiful. Is it? Lyrana asked quietly. Sometimes I wonder if we've sacrificed too much for beauty. On their 8th week, Lyrana took Jack to a garden that floated above the highest towers. Plants with leaves like jewels and flowers that sang soft melodies filled the space. No one is allowed here except the Luminari Council, she said, touching a flower that changed color at her touch. Then why bring me? Jack asked. Lyrana's golden skin glowed brighter. Because you see things differently. Your eyes aren't blinded by thousands of years of genetic pride. As the twin moons rose over the garden, Lyrana asked the question Jack had been expecting for weeks. Don't humans worry about making their children worse by choosing the wrong partner? How can you leave something so important to chance? Jack smiled. We don't see it as chance. We've learned that mixing different genes often makes children stronger, not weaker. Some of our greatest humans came from parents nobody would have picked as a perfect match. That goes against everything we believe, Leyrana said, but she sounded curious, not dismissive. Maybe that's why I'm here, Jack replied, to show you a different way of seeing things. They met almost daily after that. Jack taught Leyrana about human music, which the Luminari found chaotic but fascinating. She showed him ancient Luminari, dances that told the story of their evolution. When other Luminari saw them together, they whispered behind their hands. Jack knew rumors were spreading, but Leyrana didn't seem to care. High Counselor Vexara, however, cared very much. After 3 months, she summoned Leyrana to her private chambers. Jack wasn't invited, but Leyrana told him everything later. You forget your position, Vexara had scolded. You carry the finest genetic sequence our civilization has produced in 3 generations. Your children are meant to lead our people to even greater heights of perfection. I will not have you polluted by spending time with unrefined beings. Leyrana had stood tall before her mother. Perhaps our idea of perfection is too narrow. There's more to life than genetic engineering. You sound like them now, Vexara had hissed. Remember who you are. When Leyrana told Jack about this fight, they were sitting in a small garden Jack had planted in his quarters. He had smuggled seeds from Earth, and somehow the alien plants thrived in Luminari soil. My mother wants me to stop being your guide, Leyrana said, gently touching a daisy that had just bloomed. Will you? Jack asked, his heart sinking. Leyrana looked at him, her golden eyes seeming to see right into his soul. No. For the first time in my life, I'm learning instead of just being told. I won't give that up, not even for her. Jack reached out slowly and took her 6-fingered hand in his 5-fingered one. Their hands looked strange together, but somehow, right. I'm glad, he said simply. Neither of them noticed the spy drone hovering outside the window, recording everything for the High Counselor. 2 days after the spy drone recorded Jack and Leyrana holding hands, the real trouble began. Jack was called to an emergency meeting with the human delegation. They want us to leave, Sam told him, her face pale. All of us. Right now. What? Why? Jack asked, though he already knew the answer. Sam couldn't look him in the eye. The official reason is that we've gathered sufficient cultural data. The unofficial reason is you and the Golden Girl. Jack's stomach twisted into a knot. Where is Leyrana? I need to talk to her. Don't make this worse, warned Bill, the delegation's senior scientist. We've been ordered to pack our things and be on the shuttle by tomorrow morning. Jack ignored him and rushed out. He tried Leyrana's communication device, but it was dead. He ran to the garden where they usually met, but she wasn't there. As the hours passed, his worry grew. Had Vexara locked her daughter away? Just before midnight, as Jack was stuffing his few belongings into a bag, his door slid open. Leyrana stood there, her golden skin dimmer than usual, her eyes red as if she'd been crying. My mother showed me the recording, she said without greeting. She said I must never see you again. Jack's heart sank. And what did you say? A small smile appeared on Leyrana's face. I said it was too late for that. She stepped into his room, and the door closed behind her. For the first time, they were truly alone without spies or observers. I've been thinking about what you told me, Leyrana said, moving closer. About how humans choose partners based on feelings, not genetics. Jack nodded, hardly daring to breathe. I want to know what that feels like, she whispered. That night, they talked for hours about their different worlds, their hopes and the connection they both felt that went beyond biology or culture. When morning came, they had made their decision. The human delegation waited nervously by the shuttle. Jack was nowhere to be found. We can't leave without him, Sam argued. We have our orders, Bill replied grimly. Suddenly, alarms blared throughout the city. Guards rushed past the landing pad toward the upper levels where the elite lived. What's happening? Sam asked a passing luminary worker. The High Counselor's daughter is missing, the worker said, fear in his voice. It's never happened before. Minutes later, Jack appeared, running hand in hand with Leyrana. Both carried small bags. We need to go, Jack said breathlessly. Now? Are you crazy? Bill exploded. You can't bring her. This will cause an interstellar incident. I'm claiming asylum, Layrana said firmly. It is my right under the Cultural Exchange Agreement. Sam shook her head in disbelief. That clause was meant for political refugees, not what? Layrana challenged. Not someone who wants to choose their own path? The sound of guards grew closer. Jack squeezed Layrana's hand. It's now or never. Bill looked from Jack to Layrana, then at the approaching guards. With a curse, he waved them into the shuttle. Earth will have my head for this. The shuttle lifted off just as High Counselor Vexara herself arrived, surrounded by elite guards. Jack would never forget the look of pure rage on her face as they soared into the sky. The news spread faster than their shuttle could fly. By the time they reached Earth, the story of the luminary princess who ran away with a human was the biggest scandal in the galaxy. Scientists from a dozen worlds declared the pair should be separated for their own good. Some claimed Jack had kidnapped Layrana, while others suggested he had infected her with a human mind virus. On Earth, the reactions were mixed. Many humans were fascinated by Layrana, the first luminary most had ever seen. Others worried about angering the powerful luminary ascendancy. You're throwing away everything, Vexara told her daughter during their final video call. Your position, your heritage, your future. And for what? A genetic dead end. Layrana touched the screen gently, as if trying to reach her mother across the vast distance. I'm gaining something our people lost generations ago when we became obsessed with genetic perfection. I'm gaining choice. Vexara cut the connection. The Luminary Ascendancy officially disowned Layrana and demanded her return. Earth refused, citing her asylum claim. Jack and Layrana moved to a small town in the countryside where they could live more peacefully. The local people were curious but mostly kind. Jack found work as a consultant on alien relations while Layrana began studying Earth biology with great interest. Do you regret it? Jack asked one evening as they watched the sun set, something the luminary world, with its perpetual golden haze, never experienced. Layrana's golden skin glowed warmly in the fading light. Not for a moment, she replied, resting her head against his shoulder. Though I admit I do miss the floating gardens. Jack smiled and kissed the top of her head. We'll build our own, he promised. Maybe not floating, but beautiful all the same. Neither of them knew that, at that very moment, something impossible was happening inside Layrana's body, something that would change the galaxy forever. 6 months after moving to Earth, Layrana woke up feeling sick. At first, she thought it was just her body still adjusting to Earth's air and food. But when the sickness continued for weeks, Jack insisted they see a doctor. Dr. Linda Porter had never treated an alien before, but she was the only doctor within 100 miles who was willing to try. She ran tests for 3 days straight. On the 4th day, Dr. Porter called them into her office. Her face was pale and her hands shook slightly as she looked at her tablet. I don't know how to say this, she began, so I'll just say it. Layrana, you're pregnant. The room went completely silent. Jack's mouth fell open. Layrana stared at the doctor as if she'd started speaking in a foreign language. That's not possible, Layrana finally said. Luminari can only reproduce with other Luminari. Our genetics are too different from humans. Dr. Porter nodded. I know. That's why I ran the tests 27 times. But there's no mistake. She turned her tablet around to show them a scan. This is inside you right now. The image showed a tiny form, glowing faintly. It didn't look exactly human or exactly Luminari, but somehow a mix of both. How? Jack whispered. I have no idea, Dr. Porter admitted. By all the laws of biology, we know this shouldn't be possible, but it's happening. They left the doctor's office in a daze. As they drove home in their small car, Layrana kept her hand on her stomach, a look of wonder on her face. No Luminari has ever had a child with another species, she said softly. My people will say it's impossible. Jack reached over and took her free hand. Well, they're wrong. The proof is right there. The next few weeks were a blur of secret, tests and worried conversations. They agreed to keep the pregnancy hidden as long as possible. If word got out, scientists from all over the galaxy would want to study Lyrana and the baby like lab specimens. But keeping such a huge secret wasn't easy. As Lyrana's body changed, her golden skin began to glow even brighter than before, and when she was emotional, small objects around her would sometimes float in the air. A new ability neither of them could explain. At 4 months, they couldn't hide it anymore. Lyrana's belly was growing, and the changes in her were too obvious. They decided to tell a trusted few human doctors who could help them. Dr. Porter brought in specialists who had worked with alien biology before. They were amazed by what they found. "The embryo is doing something I've never seen before," said Dr. Naveen, a genetics expert. "It's taking DNA from both parents, but instead of having problems because they're different species, it's adapting." "What do you mean, adapting?" Jack asked. Dr. Naveen showed them complex genetic charts. Normally, when two different species try to reproduce, the genes fight each other or just don't work together. But your baby's human genes are actually reshaping themselves to be compatible with the luminary genes. It's as if what? Lyrana pressed. "As if the human DNA is more flexible," Dr. Naveen said with wonder in his voice. "More programmable. It's changing itself to work with the luminary DNA while keeping important traits from both parents." Word eventually leaked out. A nurse sold the story to a news outlet, and suddenly Jack and Lyrana's small house was surrounded by reporters, curious onlookers, and government agents offering protection. And then, the worst happened. A luminary ship entered Earth's orbit. High Counselor Vexara had come herself, along with the luminary's top medical team. "My mother is here to take me back," Lyrana said, fear in her voice. But when Vexara arrived, at their home, surrounded by guards and doctors, her face showed not anger but intense curiosity. "Is it true?" she demanded without greeting. "You carry a hybrid child?" Lyrana nodded, one hand protective over her swollen belly. "Impossible," whispered one of the luminary doctors. "Our genetics cannot mix with lesser species." "Apparently they can," Jack said, standing firm beside Lyrana. Vexara stepped forward, her silver eyes fixed on her daughter's stomach. "I must see the scans." All of them. For the next month, an uneasy truce existed. Vexara stayed on Earth, watching every test, questioning every doctor. She rarely spoke to Jack and only stiffly to Lyrana, but sometimes, when she thought no one was looking, she would stare at Lyrana's growing belly with something like wonder on her face. Then, in the 8th month, something changed. Lyrana was sitting in the garden Jack had built for her, full of both earth and luminary plants, when Vexara approached alone. "May I?" the High Counselor asked, gesturing to the bench beside Lyrana. Lyrana nodded, surprised. They sat in silence, for several minutes. "Our scientists still cannot explain it," Vexara finally said. "By all we know, this child should not exist, and yet it does," Lyrana replied, placing a hand on her belly. Vexara turned to face her daughter fully. "May I touch?" Lyrana's eyes widened with surprise, but she nodded. Vexara placed her 6-fingered hand gently on Lyrana's stomach. Just then, the baby kicked. Vexara gasped and pulled her hand back as if burned. Then, slowly, she reached out again. This time, when the baby moved, a single tear slid down the High Counselor's silver cheek. "All our advancements," she whispered, "and we have not felt a child grow inside us for 1,000 years." The luminary had long ago moved to artificial gestation for greater genetic control. Lyrana took her mother's hand and squeezed it. For the first time in months, they truly looked at each other. "Perhaps," Vexara said softly, "we have lost something important in our quest for perfection." The baby came during a thunderstorm. Rain lashed against the windows as Lyrana's labor pains grew stronger. Human and luminary doctors crowded the special birthing room they had prepared. Jack held Lyrana's hand the whole time, whispering words of encouragement. After 6 hours, a new cry joined the storm's noise. The doctors lifted up a tiny form that glowed like a small star in the dimly lit room. "It's a girl," Dr. Porter announced, tears in her eyes. "She's perfect." The baby had Lyrana's golden skin but with tiny patterns across it that looked like stars. Her eyes shifted colors when she blinked, and soft, dark hair like Jack's covered her head. She had 5 fingers on each hand like a human, but they were long and graceful like her mother's. Vexara, who had waited outside during the birth, entered slowly. For the first time since anyone could remember, the High Counselor looked uncertain. "May I see the child?" she asked softly. Jack nodded and placed their daughter in Vexara's arms. The baby reached up and touched the High Counselor's face with one tiny hand. Vexara gasped, and everyone in the room felt a strange wave of emotion wash over them like pure joy made into energy. "Impossible," Vexara whispered, but there was wonder in her voice, not rejection. They named the baby Alara, an old Earth word meaning starlight. As she grew over the next few months, it became clear she was like no other child in the galaxy. At 3 months, she could float small toys above her crib. At 6 months, she spoke her first words, in both human and luminary languages. Most amazing of all was her ability to change. When the weather turned cold, her skin developed a soft layer of fur that disappeared when spring came. When she got a small cut from a rose thorn, her skin healed in minutes. She could see in the dark and hear sounds no one else could. "She's adapting," Dr. Naveen explained after running tests. "Her human DNA gives her the ability to change her own genetic expression based on what she needs. It's beyond anything we've ever seen." News of Alara spread throughout the galaxy. Scientists begged to study her. Some religious groups claimed she was a sign of doom, while others said she was a blessing. Everyone had an opinion about the star-patterned child. Jack and Lyrana protected their daughter fiercely. They only allowed a few trusted scientists to observe her, and only if they shared their findings with both humans and Luminari. The biggest surprise came from the Luminari themselves. 3 years after Alara's birth, the Luminari Council, led by a changed Vexara, proposed a formal alliance with Earth as equals. "We have much to learn from each other," Vexara said during the signing ceremony, her eyes on her granddaughter who played happily nearby. "Perhaps there is wisdom in having no fixed pedigree. Without rigid patterns, new forms can emerge." Jack smiled at his mother-in-law, remembering how she had once mocked humans for their chaotic genetics. "We don't need to engineer perfection when we can embrace change," he said. As years passed, more mixed couples formed between humans and other species. More hybrid children were born, each unique but all showing special abilities that came from mixing different genetic paths. On her 20th birthday, Alara stood before the newly formed Galactic Alliance as its youngest ambassador. Her skin glowed with golden light, and the star patterns shifted as she spoke. Behind her stood her proud parents and grandmother, once bitter enemies, now family. "The greatest strength of any species," Alara told the assembled representatives, her voice carrying without a microphone, "is not purity but adaptability, not isolation, but connection." As applause filled the chamber, Lyrana took Jack's hand and squeezed it gently. "Not bad for a species with no pedigree," he whispered. "Perhaps," Lyrana replied with a smile. "The finest pedigree of all is the freedom to become something new."